Come one, come all. It's story time with an alchemist. The great work begins now. The Buddha and the Beggar. Once there was a beggar who lived on the streets, and he was sitting there one day, recognizing that his food had been diminishing every day, day after day. The amount of food that he had been able to muster up, been able to find in garbage cans, to be able to find on the streets, that through his begging he was able to acquire enough money to just buy a morsel of bread. He realized that it was decreasing. So in his efforts to find out what was causing the decrease, he watched his food one evening and set a trap. And in that trap fell a mouse who had been stealing from him day after day after day. The beggar looked at the mouse and said, "Why do you steal from me? Why are you taking the little bit of food that I have? Do you not recognize that I am a beggar? That I am someone on the street who has to beg for his food daily, and I have so little? But yet there are those among us who have wealth, who have food in their pantries filled to the highest realm, but yet you continue to steal from me, a mere beggar. Why would you do this to someone less fortunate?" Mr. Mouse looked up to him and said, "Well, I find that your food is easy for me to acquire. And I also find that you are a man who will only ever have 8 possessions in your life at any given time. That is your destiny. And because that is your destiny, I must remove the 9th thing." Beggar looked at him in disgust. Why would you say that my destiny is to only have 8 things in my life? That surely I can make and have more in my life than just 8 things. Why would you say that is my destiny? "It is not for me to determine your destiny," said Mr. Mouse. "That is a question for the Buddha. So maybe you should go and seek out the Buddha in order to discover why your destiny is to only have 8 things in your life at any given time." Although the beggar was distraught and did not understand fully why Mr. Mouse was stealing from him, he set upon a journey to discover from the Buddha, to ask a question: why will I only have 8 possessions in my life at any given time? So in his journey, as he ventured into the next city, he came across a forest, and as he passed through the forest, he came into a house of rich and opulence. And he asked the people, "May I stay here overnight as I am on a journey?" And the people said, "Well, why are you on such a long journey? And of course, you may stay here." As they conversed over a meal, the beggar explained that he was told that he would only ever have 8 things in his possession during his entire life, and that he is now on a journey to the Buddha to find out why he will only have 8 things. Well, the people of the house asked a question. They said, "Well, sir, not that you owe us anything, for it is our will and pleasure to allow you to dine with us, but we have a young daughter, and she does not speak. If you could, kind sir, when you meet the Buddha, can you ask the Buddha, why is it that our daughter does not speak? And what can we do that will allow our daughter to speak?" The beggar said, "It would be my pleasure to do so. I will ask the Buddha your question." So the very next day, the beggar leaves and he journeys for a long time until he comes upon a sea of mountains. And as he climbs and trudges his way up the first mountain, he gets to the top of the mountain and he meets a wizard. And when he sees the wizard looks upon him and says, "Sir, why are you climbing this mountain? Where is it that you go to find and you see this legions of mountain, this sea of mountain? Where is it that you are trying to go? Why are you trying to climb this mountain?" And the beggar says that, "Well, I am on a journey. You see, a mouse told me that I will only have 8 possessions in my life at any given time. And I am journeying to the Buddha to ask this question of why is it that I will only ever have 8 possessions in my life, because surely I can have more." Well, Mr. Wizard looked at him and said, "I will do you a favor. I will fly you across these mountains to shorten your journey, because surely you will not survive the treacherous climbs of up and down every mountainscape." So as the wizard with his staff guided them through the sky to fly over the mountains. And the beggar, witnessing the beauty and the serenity of the land and the mountains and the snow caps, the wizard looked upon him and said, "Could you do me a favor? When you meet the Buddha, ask the Buddha a question for me. You see, I am a wizard, and for 1,000 years I have been trying to figure out how to go to heaven. You see, my teachings tell me that I will make it into heaven, but I cannot figure out how to get to heaven, and I sorely desire to do so, for I have been studying for 1,000 years." The beggar looks upon the wizard and says that, "Surely, sir, for this great thing that you have done for me, fly me across the mountain, and I will definitely ask the Buddha your question." So once they get past the mountain, they say their goodbyes. And as the beggar is making his way across the sands, he finds himself in a swamp. And in the swamp, he comes across a great turtle. The great turtle looks at him and he says, "Do you know there is a giant lake that you must pass? No man can swim. I will give you passage on my back to go across this lake." The beggar, astounded by his generosity, said, "Thank you, sir." And they journey across the lake. And as they are going across the lake, the great turtle asks, "So why is it that you are going across the lake? Where do you destine?" And he said, "Well, I was told by a mouse that I will only ever have 8 possessions in my life, and that if I do not go and ask the Buddha this question, I will never have more than these 8 possessions. So I am journeying to the Buddha to ask the question of why I only have 8 possessions in my life." So the great turtle says, "You know, I have been living here for 500 years, and according to my teachings, as the great turtle, it is my destiny to become a dragon. But for 500 years, and following the teachings, I cannot become the great dragon. Please ask the Buddha, what is it that I must do to become the great dragon?" "Surely, sir, I will. I thank you for this passage, and I will ask the Buddha your question." So the beggar journeys on and finally reaches the Buddha. And in the halls of the Buddha, there are many people there with many questions. And then the Buddha rises and he says to everyone, "Upon this day, I will answer all of your questions, but I will only answer 3 of your questions." Everyone is astounded that they get to ask the Buddha 3 questions. But the beggar is a bit distraught because the beggar came, but he has 4 questions. And as he pondered those 4 questions, he said the turtle has been living for 500 years. The wizard has been living for 1,000 years. The little girl has never spoken a word. And surely her parents are distraught. So in thinking of the problems of the others, the beggar could not ask his own question. So when it was his turn, he came up to the Buddha and asked the questions of each of the people who had helped him along his journey. So when he asked the Buddha the question of the turtle, the Buddha answered and said, "Well, you see, the turtle lives in his shell and need only to come out of his shell to become a dragon. The wizard holds a staff at all times that represents his power. He only needs to set down his staff and he will ascend to heaven. And as far as the young girl, the day she meets her soulmate, she will speak." So the beggar, satisfied with asking the questions and the answers given by the Buddha, he journeyed on. And when he came across the Mr. Turtle at the great sea of the great lake, he said what the Buddha had told him. That Mr. Turtle, all you must do is come out of your shell. And the moment you come out of your shell, you will become a dragon. This is according to the Buddha. So the great turtle comes out of his shell. And when he comes out of his shell, he sees that there are pearls within his shells of great wealth. And he tells the beggar Now that I am out of my shell and I have become a dragon, I no longer need the shell. I no longer need these pearls. So as I am now a dragon, I gift them to you. So now the beggar has the wealth of pearls. And he moves along. And when he comes to the great mountains and sees the wizard atop another mountain, Mr. Wizard looks upon him, and he looks up at him with a shining in his eyes because he knows that his question has been answered. And the beggar goes on and answers him and says that the Buddha has decreed that the moment that you drop your staff, that you will ascend to heaven. And so he drops his staff. He gives it to the beggar. And now the beggar has power to fly himself over the mountains. But as he prepares to fly over the mountains, upon this mountain, the wizard is transfigured and ascends to heaven. And when he flies to the home of the people whose daughter could not speak, the wealthy family that he has met, he shows up now with power and money and the answer to their question. And he begins to speak with the parents. He said, "It has been told to me by the wisdom of the Buddha that your daughter merely does not speak because she has yet to meet her soulmate. But the moment that she meets her soulmate, your daughter will begin to speak." And just at that moment, the young girl comes down the stairs, sees the beggar, and says, "Is this the young man who was here a mere week ago?" And they look into each other's eyes and fall in love. And this has been Story Time with an Alchemist. It's the story of the beggar and the Buddha. What this story tells you is that sometimes we sit as the beggar, looking at our own problems and looking at a few possessions that we have and think that we should have greater, but it seems that we continue to have the same or less. It wasn't until a mouse inspired the beggar to go off and seek other wisdom, to seek something that he may not have recognized. And in that journey, he recognized, came to find that other people who had assisted him had problems that were deemed larger than his own. So in the midst of the Buddha, when recognizing that he could only ask 3 questions of his 4, he selflessly asked the questions of the other 3 people because they had been beneficial and helped him along his journey. But in answering their questions, he was able to gain wealth by helping the turtle. You see, the turtle could not become a dragon because the turtle shell, that protection, was his anchor. Sometimes we have anchors in our lives that's keeping us from being able to become the greatness that we have inside of us. Many of you will say that you want to become a lion, or that you're a stallion, or that you're a beast, or that you are whatever you are, an entrepreneur, a great husband, great wife, great father, great mother. But until you let go of your anchors, you may never ever ascend to becoming a dragon, or as I like to say, becoming a stallion and keep on running. So until you free yourself to be yourself, then your greatness is always negotiable. So you have to let go of your turtle shell, let go of your anchor. You see, the wizard looked to ascend to heaven, raise his consciousness to a level where he is in the dimensional planes with other astral beings, but he could not because he was holding on to the power that rooted him here on this planet, in this understanding, in this knowing. But it wasn't until the wizard realized that he had to let go of what he perceived to be power in this realm of reality, he could not ascend to the next realm. Let me put it in more layman's terms for you. Until you release the power of the position that you may have on your job, you may be negating the ability for you to be able to ascend in another realm of work. Until you stop saying that, oh, I was told by my mother or my father that this is how I'm supposed to be as a man or a woman towards my wife or my husband, then you are stagnant in being able to have the greater relationship with your husband or wife. Until you let go of your perceived power and be willing to open yourself up to new levels of understanding, you will maintain you will be rooted in this understanding that you have right now and never be able to ascend to the next level. And as far as the little girl not being able to speak until she met her soulmate, sometimes, until you see things for what they are, it is not time for you to speak. Sometimes we speak. We get involved in things. We get involved with people. We get involved with opportunities. That is not good for us. And we know that we should not speak on that. We should not move on that. That we should be patient. And in being patient, we will find what is our true path, our true opportunities in life. We will find our true heart's desire. We may find our true purpose in life when we are patient to evaluate ourselves and wait for what we know is true for us. Now, many have heard this story is primarily told in Thailand, and people have their own ideas of what the story means. So I asked the question in the comments, what does this story mean to you? Are you anchored in something that is holding you back from becoming what you truly want to be? Are you hell-bent on holding on to some power that you have here and not willing to relinquish that power so that you can experience something greater in life? And are you going after every and any opportunity, every person that walks into your life? Or are you being patient and being quiet and silent until the right person walks into your life? Or are you like the beggar in the beginning, sitting there trying to hold on to the meager life that you have when there is so much greatness in there for you, when there's so much abundance in this world for you to have? Are you still holding on to that? What is going on in your life? Which of these fit your life, or do they all fit, or do a combination of more of one or two fit into your life? This is the self-discovery that you must have in order to find your true greatness and to have what the beggar began to achieve once he started looking beyond himself. He achieved wealth, he achieved power, he achieved love, but most importantly, he achieved wisdom. So this has been Storytime with the Alchemist. Enjoy your day. Have a great day. Remember, free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is truly non-negotiable.